everybody. How are you today?
Woo!
Woo! Yeah, energy. We love it. Okay. So hi, my name is Kai. I'm with Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore, and I'm so touched that you guys chose me to be moderator today for you.
Oh, of course, when they asked me, yours was the first name, when I realized you were going to be here, yours was the first name that popped into my head, honestly. I know you've interviewed me a couple times before, and you've been so wonderful.
Oh my god, thank you. Crying, tears, actual tears. Okay. Well, oh gosh, I already lost my place and it's just the first minute. I could. Yeah, okay, so this is Tracy Wolff. Let's please give her a round of applause.
Woo!
Tracy is an amazing author, and I don't just say that because I'm a big fan of her book series, but just because she is. That's exactly who you are. Thanks. So I'm going to give you a quick bio for those of you who don't know Tracy, and we'll get to that. So Tracy Wolff is the #1 New York Times and #1 International and USA Today best-selling author of over 60 novels that run the gamut from young adult action and adventures to new adult romance and from women's fiction to erotica, my favorite. A longtime lover of vampires, dragons, and all things that go bump in the night, Tracy loves nothing more than combing her affection for paranormal creatures with her love of writing, torture heroes, and kick-butt heroines. Today we're focusing on your YA series, which we'll get into in a second, but I thought I'd start with this so that any new readers in the audience can get a feel for your vibe. So Tracy, the YA fantasy genre is very well loved by people of all ages and backgrounds. Who are some amazing YA authors that inspired the writer you are today? And they don't have to be YA.
Oh my gosh, but YA authors that have inspired me?
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think when you write vampires, you're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yeah.
So there's a ton of them, and not necessarily YA, but like Bram Stoker.
Yes.
Michelle Mead, of course. Stephanie Meyer. I think everybody laughs that Crave has a nod to Twilight in it.
Yes.
But I feel like if you're throwing your hat into the YA vampire genre in the world that we live in, I mean, it's kind of rude not to, at least not to the books that came before you and blazed such incredible trails. Other YA favorites, Neil Shusterman, I'm a huge fan of his. Marissa Meyer, Ali Condi had a really incredible series. I don't think she's writing so much anymore, but she had an incredible series about a decade ago called Match that I really, really loved. I love YA novels and I love to read them.
So do I. Yeah. Okay. If your book, Sweet Vengeance or Crave, was the love child of some well-known books in the YA genre, what books would you say?
I think the description that they give Crave a lot is Harry Potter meets Twilight.
Very good description. Yeah.
And they have a new one for Sweet Nightmare. I'm terrible at the mashups. I'm not the girl to play the mashup game, but I know my publisher does though.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remember. Do you remember what the one for Sweet Nightmare is? It's horror, because they were giving out a horror, one of the horror novels meets, anyway, I don't know, I'll look it up and I'll let you know. But horror meets paranormal meets romance.
Amazing. So like a little bit of a dark academia vibe.
Oh, it's got a dark academia trying to kill you.
Amazing. That's the best kind. Okay, well, I'm very excited to talk about Sweet Nightmare, which is going to come out May 7th,
Yes.
I believe. Yes. But we can't talk about it without first introducing the world it's taking place in, so let's go to Crave.
Okay.
And by the way, for those of you who have read Crave, I'm dressed as Macy today. It's the pink hair and, all the quirky vibes. I love her.
I love that Macy has a different color hair in every book, but everybody picks the pink hair to be Macy. That's just the one.
Yeah, I mean, it's her one defining thing when you first meet her, right? And so, it's just I love Macy. She's amazing.
She's my favorite.
Okay, well, the Crave series. Would you please tell us a quick blurb about the entire?
Oh, of the entire thing? Well, the premise of the Crave series is it's a fish out of water story. A girl named Grace Foster's parents die, and she ends up having to go live with her uncle and cousin, Macy, who are her only two remaining relatives that she knows about and that she's known, but she hasn't seen them in a decade. She is from San Diego, but the book takes place in Alaska because her uncle runs a boarding school in Alaska. And when she gets there to the very remote mountains of Denali, so remote, I think she says at one point in the book that Google show up on Google. She finds out that the cute guy that's giving her a hard time is maybe a little more than just a guy. Maybe he's a vampire. And maybe the new guy she befriended is actually a dragon. And Macy's a witch, and she has no idea what she is, but except for lunch. And that's pretty much the basis of how Crave goes. And it goes from that to Grace coming into her power and finding out that she has a really big role to play in this new universe that she's found herself, in this new world that she's found herself.
Yeah. I think it's something that I found really fun when I first read Crave is like the chess, the whole overlying theme of chess and like playing it. Would you touch on that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we first find the chess set when she meets the first fat guy. There's a little triangle. It's between two brothers, Jackson and Hudson. And when she first meets Jackson, who's the hero of the first book, there's a chess set, and she's kind of looking at it because it's like vampires versus dragons, and she's looking at it, and she picks up the vampire queen, and he warns her about the vampire queen being a little dangerous, and she's kind of like, I don't know who this guy is or what he's talking about. But through the entire thing, right, Grace and Jackson and Hudson and all of these other characters, Macy included, find out that they really are part of a chess game that's been going on between two really powerful beings in the world, and they've just kind of been pawns for a very, very long time. And so it's about how to go from that to being the chess masters, right?
Yeah.
And how they get to take control of the game.
Yeah.
And let the pawns be the queen.
Yeah. Oh, that's exactly where she ends up, huh? Yeah. And so I guess that transitions really nicely into the themes of the book, which feminism is a huge part of it. And something that I just really admire about it is how you've managed to create such a headstrong and compassionate female lead amongst all the other diverse ones. And just please tell me a little bit more about Grace and your process of creating such a complex character.
Oh, absolutely. I always say that that of all the characters I've ever written, Grace is the one that smells like me. And good or bad, because when I ask, when people come up and they tell me who their favorite characters in the novel is, it's Hudson. It's like always Hudson. Sometimes it's Jackson. A lot of times it's Macy. It's never Grace, by the way.
Oh,
that's alright. But she's the one I think that's a lot like me. But I think that Rachel Hall was in here a while ago, and she was talking about the fact that she writes strong women because she doesn't know any weak women. And I thought that was a really powerful statement because it really echoes kind of what the Crave series is about. For me, I really wanted to show not just strong women, but that there's all kinds of ways to be strong. I think that the media and a lot of the books we read and all the movies we see say that there's only one way to be a strong woman, and if you're not like that, then you're weak, or you're a victim, or you're this, or you're that. And I think that that's not true. I think that female strength comes in all kinds of different categories and all different kinds of ways. It comes like Macy, who is so kind and so nurturing and your biggest cheerleader, and who will always have your back no matter what you need. And it comes in Grace, whose biggest strength is that she always gets up one more time when she gets knocked down. She's never the toughest in the room. She's never the most powerful in the room, but she's the one who, no matter what, will always get back up one more time. Yeah. And I think that's, there's a lot of power in that. I think in the world we live in, for women particularly, there's a lot of power in being able to get back up, to let all the stuff that happens to you roll off your back and just, show up again. Yeah. And then there's Eden, who is just, she is the in-your-face, kick butt, burn everything to the ground, take no prisoners kind of girl. There's the bloodletter, right, who is one of the chess masters. Yes. Who is canny and sly and just very, very smart. So
terrifying.
And terrifying.
Yeah.
You don't get a name like the Bloodletter if you're sweet. So anyway, I think that was one of the big things that I really wanted to get through in the story. And when I was crafting Grace, it was really about. You mentioned the word compassion, and I think that's so important because I think sometimes there's not enough compassion in the world that we live in, enough empathy for people. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was create characters. These really scary, powerful characters like, Hudson, who can, anything he wants besides being a vampire. Mm-hmm. And Flint the dragon, and all these But these people, you know, found family. I'm an only child, and I moved around a lot, so of course I'm always all about found family in my books. Every book has that theme because you know, it took me years to find mine. And only child of older parents. My parents died early, you know, and so I was, you know, gathering. But more than that, just this idea that we can be good to each other, and it's okay. There's power in being good to each other. There's not power in being mean, and that I think that most of the characters, and I think this is what a lot of people respond to, is they really are just good people. At the end of the day, they're just doing the best that they can in the world that they live in, and trying to do less harm than they do good.
Yeah,
So.
that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, I kind of put it better myself.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I think you touched on this a little bit, which was like one of the other themes that I wanted to get into was the theme of grief. Grace's parents die right off the bat, and that's something, that's a backstory that's really hard to process and go through, and especially as we as humans, we go through a lot of grief ourselves. So if you would touch on the process of grief and how each character finds power through that. Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna actually deviate a little bit and tell a story about how I met Kai.
Oh!
Poor Kai. I mentioned that my dad died very early. He died when I was 21. But my mom actually died in the process of me writing this series. And Court had just, the fourth book in the series had just come out, like it had come out that week. And I had an interview set up with Mysterious Galaxy, and Kai was going to interview me. And my mother had died that morning. And my publisher asked me, do you want to cancel everything? And I was like, I mean, she'd been in hospice, so, you know, and I've been taking care of her, so we knew that it was coming. It was still a horrible shock. But, because it wasn't supposed to happen that fast. But anyway, not to bring everybody down. But so anyway, I was like, no, I mean, let's just do it, because I'll just have to, you know, do it later. And so we did it, and I got out, and I remember I'm like, I'm sorry if I'm not on my game, you know, my mother just died, and poor Kai just looked at me. But you were so wonderful, you were so kind, and it was, I could not have asked for a better person to interview me that day. So I do think that this series deals with grief. I think it deals with my own grief, because one thing my agent says is that the series really reflects the pandemic, and I think that that's true. I wrote Crave before the pandemic, and actually I had gone to, my publisher had wanted me to get on a plane in March of 2020, and my mother had COPD and lived with me. And I was like, I am not getting on a plane in early March 2020. I mean, it's not going to happen. So my partner and I got in a car and we drove to her house in Denver, because she had 2,000 copies of Crave that she had promised to people in the industry that needed to be signed. So I got in a car and I drove, and we signed it, and we got home on late March 12th. And Rachel Hall was just talking about March 13th, that magic day, and on March 13th, everything locked down. You know, and so we had like just gotten home in time. And so the other books of the series, right up until To Cherish, which by then we were getting out of it, but the other four were all written in the heat of the pandemic, like in Crush, when Hudson is trapped in Grace's head and just wants out, right?
Yes.
And there's like, it kind of reflects the themes of that, and the grief that, you know, and the pain that we went through with there, and the anxiety that Grace has, anxiety that came from her parents' death, and these panic attacks that she deals with through the course of the books. And you know, as more and more bad things are happening and people that she cares about are dying around her, the panic attacks get worse as the books go on, and it's about how does she deal with that. And I think the thing is, my editor and I actually kind of went at it a little bit at the beginning of Crave, because she was like, I think you're concentrating too much on this. I think it's too much of a downer. And I was like, I think it's important. I think that people, especially in the world that we live in, right? Anxiety is, you know, it's just so prevalent. I have a son who has very terrible anxiety. I have taught numerous students. You know, people who are very, very close to me have really, really terrible anxiety and OCD and any number of things. And I think that we needed a book to deal with it with compassion.
Yeah, that's right.
And show what it is, and that you can still, you know, you can still live a life, you can still do all these things. It's not always easy. It's not like, oh, you just take a pill and it makes it all better.
Yeah.
Or it's not like, oh, you just wake up one day and you're better. It is a lifelong struggle.
Yeah.
But that there's hope.
Yeah.
That is one of the
Tracy so much.
I love you so much.
Yeah, well, oh man, I don't even know how to come back to that. I felt that so hard. Well, yeah, like you said, anxiety is such a huge thing that people deal with nowadays, and I feel like a lot of the things that get us through anxiety are the people we surround ourselves with, which she surrounds herself with the Vega brothers, with Macy, and I just wanted to touch a little bit on the Vega brothers. We can't talk about Grace's journey without, of course, including the Vega brothers, and
So I like that, the Vega brothers.
yeah.
In my head, they're Jackson and Hudson, but I like that name, the Vega brothers.
Yes, and I'm Team Hudson, but so yeah, let's talk about the romance aspect of the story, but not just like the kissy boo-boos, but just how they support Grace throughout her journey, and what tropes you use, what sets them apart from other YA romance stories, all that good stuff.
It's so funny that you say you're Team Hudson, because like 99% of the people are.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I'll meet like a Team Jackson person,
Yeah.
and they're just very angry with me at the end.
Oh.
So anyway, I was at Comic-Con a couple weeks ago in Kansas City, and this woman came up to me, and she was like, I'm Team Jackson, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And, you never know what to say to that. Like, sorry, we're talking this and that, just going on. And then the people around her are just like, how, going on it. And then she's like, I said, well, which book, have you read the whole series? She's like, oh no, I only read the first book. And I'm like, that doesn't even count. That doesn't even count. You're like, what else are you right now?
Yeah.
She's like, no, I'm always going to be. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, the process of creating them was really funny when I was writing. Like, we kind of always wanted to do some things. My editor was super involved in the series, and she is amazing, and I love her. But we always wanted to do some things, and like one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to play with the dynamic of does the main, the guy who starts out as the hero, does he really have to be straight? Can he be bi? Can he be all those things? And so through the rest of the series, we get to see Jackson kind of find his own happily ever after, not with Grace.
Spoiler.
But yeah, spoiler. Sorry. But there's a lot of things that we wanted to do in this thing. But when we really first thought about okay, I just knew from the second I wrote Hudson very quickly in book one. I thought, I knew that this is where we wanted to go.
Yeah.
But the problem is the fandom going to accept him, or is everybody in Team Jackson and hate me, and is it going to kill the series? There's a lot of things you have to worry about, right? And so anyway, when I was writing Crush, we're in the pandemic. We'd ended up having to speed up the release date for a couple of different reasons. There was printing problems, there's all kinds of problems that were coming about. And the books are very big, and there's no paper, and there's all kinds of situations. And they could only guarantee us paper if we could get it printed at a certain, anyway, it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So we sped up the release date of the second book. And so my editor's like, you've got to do this. And I write pretty quickly, so it's not a problem. But she's like, just be aware that this is happening. Mm-hmm. And I was like, absolutely. So I'm writing along. And so I write really slow beginnings, really, really slow beginnings. It's because I'm trying to get to know the characters, I'm trying to get to know the world and what I'm doing, and I'm trying to work out the story. And so I write and rewrite and write and rewrite. And then somewhere around page 100, I'm like, all right, let's go. And then the book pours out of me, and we just raced, from 100 to page 700 or whatever it is. Yeah. Like I said, they're big books. But anyway, everybody wanted to know. Everybody wanted to meet Hudson. My agent wanted to meet Hudson. My editor wanted to meet Hudson. They're like, is he, they wanted to know, could he carry the series, right? Yeah. Because the way I do things is, I plan them out, but the characters come to me when they come to me. Yeah. When I meet them. I didn't know Jacon was going to show up in, flippers and a mask and have just, been pulled off, scuba diving in Hawaii when he showed up. Yeah. I just knew I needed the god of time. Mm-hmm. So anyway, they kept saying, hey, have we met Hudson yet? I'm like, nope, go away. Have we met Hudson yet? Nope, go away. Mm-hmm. And this went on for 2 weeks, and I wrote rewrote, and so I'm on page about, what that was then probably about 150, what became page 70 or so in the book, because my editor just cuts the first half of what I write. And she's just like, this is all you trying to figure stuff out, so off it goes. Okay. This is the story. And so about there, one day, and there he was. He just showed up leaning. He showed up in my head leaning against the ice cave, and I was just like, oh, there you are. And he opened his mouth, and I was like, oh, I like you. you. And so I'm like, hey, met Hudson, I think you're gonna like him, I'll send him to you tonight. And so I just, wrote away. And that night I'm like, okay, I'm sending him to you. 15 minutes later, my editor called and she's like, yep, just go, we've got it. He's gonna be fine, everybody's gonna love him.
Yes.
And that is how Hudson came about, and how we like decided for sure that Hudson could carry the series. But it was a little nerve-wracking, I think, for a while.
I'm glad you went through it though.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I love him. I think he's great.
Yeah, he's so sassy. And
He is sassy. He is very sassy.
Amazing. Well, I think we have enough to know, or to transition into talking about Calder Academy.
Oh, yay! That's
I'm
exciting.
Excited to talk about this. And
I am so excited. I'm so mad I bought a copy of Sweet Nightmare. The book is so beautiful, you guys. It's so beautiful. And I left it in my hotel room. I'm so mad. So I will have it tomorrow, though. So if you're still around, come see me. It's got these beautiful red edges, and the inside has this gorgeous gold snake on the hardcover. I mean, the whole book. I mean, it's just beautiful. I squealed when I saw it. So
yeah, the picture that I saw is pretty.
I'm very
cool.
excited. I'm very excited.
I'm very excited. All right.
Not to mention I like what's inside it too, so that helps.
Yeah, I mean, like, why don't you tell us about that? Yeah, the quick blurb, if you will.
The quick blurb.
Yeah.
So Calder Academy is not in Alaska. So Calder Academy is what's in the Crave world, and it is the academy for the rich kids and the princes and all those guys go there.
Mm-hmm.
Calder Academy is on an island off the coast of Galveston, Texas.
Mm.
And it is for the delinquents and the people who've lost control of their powers and the ones who can't be trusted in society and all of those, and the really lost and the really broken. And so it's kind of night and day. Mm-hmm. And it was the most fun ever. Like, I love it so much. So the premise of the series is actually each book is going to have a different hero and heroine, so it's going to be different than the Crave series. But the Calder Academy is run by characters we meet by the family of a character we meet in book 3 and 4, and her name is Carolina Calder. And
sorry, continue.
I'm sorry. And anyway, her family runs Calder Academy. They are a family of man-whores, and her mom is her aunt, the main character, Clementine's mom, is the headmaster, and she's just trying to like hold this shit together. Like, she's got like the most dangerous people on the planet, as teenagers under her care, and she's just trying to keep them from killing each other and destroying the planet. Right. And sometimes it's a better day than not. And Clementine just wants off the island. She's tired of this. And the hero, Jude, is her childhood best friend who's, for some reason, that we find out in the course of the book, stopped talking to her in 9th grade. And so they are kind of mortal enemies. And then they all get thrown together because a giant hurricane that may or may not be a hurricane, takes aim at the school, and the portal breaks, and a whole bunch of them, including Clementine and Jude, are pretty much, and a bunch of their friends, a whole new cast of characters, are left alone on this island while all magic is back, and a hurricane tries to kill them. Wow. And they try to kill each other. And nightmares.
Oh, yes, of course.
Lots and lots of nightmares. That's why it's called Sweet Nightmare. Jude is a Nomoroi, which is a dream demon. And there's a lot of trouble. There's a lot of nightmares.
Have I been saying Sweet Vengeance this whole time?
I don't know if you have or not. It used to be called Sweet Vengeance. Sweet Vengeance is now the 3rd book.
Yeah.
And Sweet Nightmare is the 1st. But if you did, I didn't even notice.
Yeah. I'm just like, I just noticed you. I was just like, oh shoot, I said Sweet Vengeance. Okay. Well, now you know the name of the 3rd book.
Okay. Sweet Nightmare, Sweet Chaos, Sweet Vengeance.
Yeah, amazing. So the location change. What is the difference? Or I know you had a significance for Grace for Alaska, that it's like remote and like so far out of her comfort zone. Why the location change for this book in particular?
Because what's the opposite of it? Like, cold, I think when you're fighting like conditions like in Alaska, it brings out a certain, survival instinct and all that. Right. I think having spent most of my life, I grew up in California, but most of my adult life I've spent either in New Orleans or Texas.
Yeah.
And there's something about the heat that makes people very, very grumpy. And like, you know, we have a phrase in Texas which is that we don't worry about hell because we have August. And it is absolutely true. And so of course I set the book at the very beginning, end of August, beginning of September, right?
Yeah.
Right in hurricane season when everything is just hot and the power goes out, there's no air conditioning and everybody is ready, you know. Regular people are ready to kill each other when that happens, like a bunch of paranormals with teeth and claws, so.
Yeah, I just noticed that that's gonna get a little feral.
Very quickly.
Love that. So like, I know we touched on like some of the Crave themes, but like, what are some of the different themes that you're gonna go through in this new series that may be the same, maybe different? You can touch on that.
You know, actually, one of the people who was an early reader because they just started sending cards out.
Yeah.
Messaged me, and she's a therapist, and she had told me, you know, she looked at Crave and she called it. She said Crave is about anxiety and life decisions and life choices.
Yeah.
And Sweet Nightmare to her was about PTSD and how you learn to trust after you've been hurt and violated.
Yeah.
And when she said that, that really hit a chord in me because that's exactly what I was going for. Oh, that's okay. Oh, goodbye, Macy. But yeah, Sweet Nightmare was a hard book for me to write. I've had a very hard couple of years in my own life, and I think that that really came out in Sweet Nightmare, in the nightmares, in the ghosts, and all the different things that are running around this island. And I think that it's about how do you go on after you've been betrayed, after you've been broken. How do you try to then forge a life for yourself out of the ruins of that?
Yeah.
And that's one of the major things. It is, of course, found family again, and because I like, it's about compassion. It's about how do you come out of that a better person and not a broken, hurt, worse, you know, cynical person, you know, who doesn't care about other people. So it kind of runs through those things.
Yeah. Well, like maybe let's dive a little bit more into that because you do say rogue paranormals, and you kind of already said like all the broken people, but like at the same time, define rogue paranormals here. Like, can we talk about like all the little monsters and stuff that's in there?
Oh, there's a lot, you know, and it's really interesting because it all comes together at the end, and certainly don't want to give anything away, as it hasn't even come out yet. But there are monsters and there are ghosts and there are all different kinds of paranormals that you didn't see in the Crave series. There are vampires and witches and all that. Yeah. There are a couple of familiar faces. Remy and Izzy from books 3 and 4 are in there. And oh my god, I have to say, Izzy has all the best lines in the book. Like she is, oh my god, that girl. I cannot wait. Her book is book 3 and I can't wait to read it. She's so much trouble. And the big question everybody keeps asking is, where does she get her knives? Because, you know, there are no knives allowed on the island, but, like, Izzy always has one or more. And I'm like, where do they come from? But, yeah, there's like I said, Juzen and Leroy. Clementine is a manicore and maybe something else that nobody knows about.
Okay.
And you've got a siren, one of the characters, the main characters who kind of gets into the found family group is a siren, and you have a wolf and a new dragon and a bunch of others. So there's a lot of there's banter. I finally got my banshee. The big joke in the series was my editor chopped my banshee out of book 2. Aww. And I was always like, it was like, you know, and she was right. It did not work for the plot. I just threw it in because I loved it. Mm-hmm. And so the big joke that's run through is, you know, when am I gonna get my banshee? When am I gonna get my banshee? And I finally got my banshee, so I'm super excited. And so yeah, there's fae. There's really dark magic fae in there. So
I love that. Was there anything in this series that you were told to cut out that you wish you left in?
No, not really, actually. This one was difficult for me. I actually wrote this one, I say 2.5 times. I wrote a whole draft, and then it wasn't right. And I think, you know, when you write a spin-off, it's interesting because you kind of want to keep the magic of the first world because you're in the same world, but you really want to set it apart from what's come before it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that the first draft was too Crave-like, you know?
Got it. Okay.
And so but I had to, I think, work through that draft to meet my characters and really work out what I needed this plot to be. And like I said, it's a lot darker and a lot more horror-filled than the Crave series was.
Mm-hmm.
And still, hopefully people still think funny. But also very dark. And so I wrote it the first time, and then I rewrote the beginning several times, and then I finally got where I wanted to be. And then once I knew it, the second draft was really solid, I think.
That's really awesome.
So hopefully, I really like it. And people so far are really liking it.
Yeah.
Fingers and toes crossed.
The
People
opening chapter, you guys, is so good.
I really love it. Okay. Chicklers.
Yes. Yes.
Can we get a description of these? I feel like I need a visual in my head.
In my head, they're like little, like, Pac-Man ghosts. And all the different colors of the rainbow, kind of, but they kind of change too. And like some of them are like kind of more snake-like, some of them are big fluff balls. So they're all different things. But
Oh, like smoky a little bit.
I guess a little like
Yeah.
smoky, yeah.
Yeah, she could be extra
Smokey had rabies.
If Smokey had rabies and was like, yeah. Yeah. That's a great description. Yeah. So Smokey had rabies, that's what she was.
We love that. Smokey is a character in Cherish. Yes, we love Smokey. So I think you touched on this a little bit, but how did your writing style change at all for this series? Did it sort of stay kind of the same with your descriptions, or did you go a little more in?
Meaning like.
Like kind of like. Does it sound like Crave, or does it sound like a completely different book?
You read the first chapter. What do you think?
I think it's different.
It's pretty different. It definitely feels darker, and it's more like, ooh, I'm a little anxious because I don't know what these things are. And then they come bite her and stuff. I'm just like, oh, okay, so we're afraid. Got it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So now we need to be afraid. I do think so. I do think that, again, some of the themes that are most important to me, things like found family and compassion and all of those, I think run through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the same. I do think there's, the chapter titles that are, ridiculous.
Awesome.
And there's, I think there is a lot of, I'm that person though. When things are bad, I'm the one who's going to crack the joke, always. Whether, and people are like, seriously, why now, Tracy? I'm like, because that's how I deal with this, okay? So there's a lot of that kind of humor in it. There are the jokes, there are that, but it does come from a darker place, I think. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And you and Clementine are the stars of these ones, right?
Yes,
And so,
this book.
what dynamics do you explore with these two that are maybe different from Hudson and Grace?
Forgiveness. I think forgiveness is a big one. I think betrayal. And identity, which I think is the root of most, if not all, YA novels, right? I think one of the great privileges of writing YA is that you get to, and we're talking about new adults as well coming in, like I said, after Rachel Hasselhall, 18 and 20-year-olds as well. I think one of the great privileges of writing for this age group, or writing about this age group, is you get to be there for the firsts.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean just the first time, sexually or whatever, but like all those firsts that you learn, like the first time you write a check, or the first time you charge on a credit card, the first time you have to you make a mistake at work and you have to deal with it, the first time, all those, the first time you get an apartment, all those really great milestones that are part and parcel of who we are and how we gather strength and how we gather confidence and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really exciting to get to write for that group. And so that thirst for identity, that thirst for and escape. Escape is obviously a very big theme in this book, and how we get to explore all of this in this world and under duress, because I think very often that who we are, in times of stress is who we really are. And I think that as long as we can, in those times when everything is going wrong and it feels like the world is against you and it feels like there is no escape and you're just shattered, I think when you look at that and you're like, hey, I still know who I am, or I finally know who I'm super proud of. I think it's my favorite kiss scene that I've ever written. And I am very excited to see how readers respond to it. And then Jude also has these incredible tattoos that may or may not, be something. And there's a really, really, really crazy, incredible scene that I love about halfway through the book. And everybody keeps telling me, oh my gosh, the fan art is going to be like on that scene. So I'm like, oh, I hope so. I would really love to see that scene, what people think that scene looks like in real life.
Well, if you get an Instagram message from me going,
Tell me what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well,
I wanted to, earlier I got caught off guard, but I did want to say, as someone who has read the Crave series and now Sweet Nightmare, that I was nervous because I stan the Crave series, but Sweet Nightmare is my new Roman Empire. I cannot shake the characters or the world, and I've tried to read several things since, and I'm now rereading Sweet Nightmare. And it's very much like, if you're thinking about mashups, it's like Wednesday meets Shutter Island.
Ooh.
And where Crave is very like, in hindsight, there's a lot of kumbaya moments in the Crave series with all of the found family, which I love. And in Sweet Nightmare, it's very much we ride at dawn.
oh,
Kind of
yay.
found family. So that's just mine.
Should bring you up here to talk about it.
That's just mine.
You're like the third person to tell me it's the Roman Empire, so yay!
I love that.
You had a question?
Crave series is like extremely complex world that you developed. Like, how did you? Like, did it start? Like, did it all just like? I can't imagine you thought, oh, this is how each book is gonna play out in this entire world. Like, how it all links together. Like, how did you start it, and like when did the rest of the series like follow in like your ideas and also the connections? Like, who knew that the blood letter was gonna be like connected to Grace's life and her grandmother too? Like that, like it just like how did all of that come together for you when you're writing?
I had a brilliant editor at Entangled with the Crave series, and she and I did a lot of brainstorming and a lot of stuff, and we knew. I created, the world. I created the school. I created, I did all the paranormals because I couldn't choose one because I love them all. Mm-hmm. And I started with that very simple thing, and then I started with like she and I were talking like, what about it being a chess game? Like, how do we make this work, and how do we build it? And then I started building it out to. So I start small, and then I continue to build right as we go. It's hard, and it's always better, I think, when you're writing, to not make a lot of rules in the first book, because once you make them, you have to live with them forever. And here I am in the second series, and so of course living with these rules that I set up, obviously in the first book, and then I've continued to set up throughout the Crave series. And so I started with this very simple premise, and I started with the chess game, and then I created the blood letter, and I knew from the moment she showed up that she was a lot more than when I first conceived of who she was. And by the time we got into the second book and all of that, I'm like, okay, Hudson is 200 years old, but he's really not 200 years old because he really hasn't lived that much. Like, how come he hasn't lived? And then I started really coming up with, all the things that you learn about in court, right? About what happened to him and what happened to Jackson and why they have powers when most vampires don't have like extra powers and all those things. So it was a slow thing, and it was a lot of questions like, this is what I wanted for these people. Now, why did they happen? So it was a lot of asking myself questions about how did this happen and why did this happen, and then we built the world out from there with all of the different things. And like, I needed the god of time, I needed the god of history, I needed, all these different gods, and I knew that they existed because I had the blood letter and I had the crone right from, kind of close to the beginning, like in my head, knowing that they were, these things that were a lot more. But it all came about long before I sat down to write. It was a lot of questioning at the beginning of each book as I built that world out more. Does that make sense? Awesome. And like when I lay down like the potions and lingo and stuff like that. And with 3, it's knowing that in book 4, they're going to be stuck drinking these potions and they're at the worst possible time, right? So it's just laying all those little Easter eggs in that you get to like finally, and I know like my readers are like, well, have this question at the end of each book, you know, and it's not till book 6 that, you know, you really tie it all up. So yeah, it's just thinking about these questions and knowing that they're out there and knowing that I have to have answers for them.
Did any of these characters surprise you in the same way Japan did? Or...
Oh, in Sweet Nightmare?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them. We'll talk about it after.
Okay, I'm just like...
Yeah, I probably had to do this. Yeah, there are some big surprises.
Yeah,
There are some big surprises.
It was so hard to like come up with questions that aren't like gonna be spoilers. I was just
I know,
like,
right? 15 minutes.
Got it.
Awesome.
Okay.
Do you have more questions? Yes.
Hi Tracy, love your books.
Oh, thank you. Love your costume.
It's Storm.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I live with the 3 biggest nerds on the planet. I am biased.
What's your costume?
Oh no, I said I love your costume.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm not a therapist, so I really love the aspect of like how you show grief and anxiety and kind of those aspects. I had a question in terms of like why you chose her to be a gargoyle. Like why specifically did you choose like that's what she would be?
The truth is she chose it. And you know, I know people hate it when writers say that because it's like such a cop-out, but it's not, because I wasn't sure going in. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna write this and I'm gonna see what happens. And I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing. And I think in my head, I thought, because you know she comes from a family of witches, I think like she's gonna be a witch, right? I mean, her families are witches. That would make sense, you know. And I'm getting it. I'm talking to my editor, and my editor's like, you know, that's fine, but I want you to go back. I want you to read it again, Tracy. I just want you to look at it. I want you to think about what you wrote. And I went back and I'm like, what's she telling you? I'm like, oh, she turns to stone. Like her stomach sinks like a stone. Oh, she lays, you know, like a statue. Like this is all throughout the book. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah. She's a gargoyle, of course she's a gargoyle. And I was nervous. Like everybody was nervous about that because it's not like gargoyles are so sexy. And usually, and like everybody's like, we really want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I think we're gonna do it. I don't think I have a choice. I think it's what she is. So let's see what happens. And then thank God people have received it well. But yeah, no, Grace told me what she was before I knew what she was.
I love that. I don't know if you've ever watched the animated series Gargoyles.
Oh my God, I have, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, I love that series. My boys and my oldest particularly, and I used to watch it after when, you know, his little winding down time after school before he'd do homework, you know, we would watch it together and eat apples.
Oh.
Of course.
Any other questions?
Yes.
So from the perspective of a strong female villain, what is an interesting approach for making a more three-dimensional character? Because I feel like if, to something you said earlier, if they get up one more time and they're knocked down, as a villain, that just makes you want to hit them harder. So how do you make characters more intriguing when they're not doing what you're hoping? Like, they're not doing what's
You
right.
have to care about them. You have to root for them. The fact of the matter is, you know, I always say, in my other life, I was an English professor for a very long time, and one of the things that I specialized in was Gothic literature and villain heroes. And heroes are the heroes of their own stories, and villains are the heroes of their own stories, and only the villain heroes are the villains of their stories. People like Hudson, right?
Sorry.
And so I think with the villains, they can't be black and white. I think that this is where I think we see villains, even some of the great villains sometimes I think are very one-dimensional. Like they're bad because they're bad, and because they just want this, and because this is the way that I am. But I think that very often if your villain is doing what they think they're doing because they think it's for the greater good, hello Thanos. I think that helps a lot. For you know, and this is not paranormal by any stretch of the imagination. There's a movie years ago. I was young. What was it? It was called Heat, and it had Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in it. And Al Pacino was the cop, and Robert De Niro was the criminal. And I will say the problem with that movie is there's no satisfying ending to that movie, because you wanted them both to win so badly. Like to this, like I think I watched that movie when it came out like 10 or 15 times because I was like fascinated by how well, the writer in me, right, was fascinated by how well they built up both characters and how you rooted all the way to the end for both of them. And if you have a villain that people root for, even though they understand that their agenda cannot happen, right? That's the thing. You have to care enough about the villain that you understand why they're doing what they're doing, but you also have to know that their agenda in the end is flawed and broken and will destroy the world that we, as we know it or whatever. And I think that if you can do that, you have a really compelling story. I mean, the problem then is, of course, you have to build a hero that's equal to that, right? They both have to be compelling. They both have to have reasons. The hero, of course, will save the world, and the villain will end up, even though they don't think that they're going to destroy it, will end up destroying whatever it is that they're going to end up destroying it in that case.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Somebody back here had a question? Yes.
I have two.
Okay.
How do you pronounce Mekhi? Is it Mekhi or Mackay?
It's Mackay. I know
I
they.
like Mekhi better.
Oh, I'm sorry. I named him after Mackay Pfeiffer, who was one of my favorite actors. Mackay, so it's Mackay.
He's one of my favorites.
Oh yay! I love him a lot too. He's a lot of fun.
And then, it might be a dumb question, and I've missed it several times listening to the books. Who are the two boys at the end of the last book that she's talking about, that Grace is talking about? That the goat ate the shoes?
I don't. What scene is this? Is this in the?
It's at the very end of the last book.
I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head. If you come see me, I don't know if they have chairs here. If they have chairs here, I will look at it and I will tell you, but I don't remember what order. I don't know.
Because I've looked it up trying to find.
Do you have chairs on there? I have chairs on
I
there.
got them.
I will tell you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
My take.
No, that's okay. Give me a sec. Come up to me at the end and I'll look, because I have it on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come up to me at the end and I'll look, and I'll tell you, because right now it's just not ringing a bell.
Yeah. I mean, we could take another question and I can see if I have it.
Are there any, I'm so sorry about that. Are there any other questions? Yes?
How did you navigate like having the modern world and the like paranormal world together? Because I feel like in other fantasies, like or like especially in like Harry Potter, it was set in the 80s, so it wasn't quite as like like the technology hadn't quite like invaded the magical world. Like how did you like balance the pop culture and the like technology with the paranormal world? I've never seen that in a
I always say I'm a paranormal writer versus a true fantasy writer, because I love the dichotomy of thinking, hey, maybe the guy next door is a vampire. Like, wouldn't that be cool? So I love that. I love setting it in the world in which we live. Part of the reason Alaska was so perfect is, it's remote. Like, nobody is out there, capturing the dragons flying around on their phone. So that's one of the many reasons I picked Alaska for it, because I had put them out not in Anchorage or something, but out in the middle of nowhere, so that they could do that. There's whole parts of Alaska. I saw there's a documentary called The Art of Flight. I don't know if anybody's ever seen it. It's a snowboarding documentary, and I wrote a series on snowboarding. I don't know, probably a decade ago now. 2015, I think, is when it came out. And I had done a ton of research on it, and one of the things I'd done was watch this documentary, and I don't know if it was in they did an 8 series TV show as well as the full documentary, and I don't know which one it was in. But one of the snowboarders, they were dropped, the Red Bull helicopter had dropped them up at the very top of one of the remote mountains in the Denali Range. And he made the comment, very offhand, but it stuck with me for, from the time I saw it till I wrote Crave. I'm walking where no human being has ever walked before. And I thought, that's where I need to put paranormals, where no human beings ever walked before, so that I don't have to worry so much about somebody catching them with a cell phone or this or that, and the dragons can fly free and all these things can happen. Other than that, I mean, I don't know, I think it's about, I think it's an added worry for these people, right? And then it's about this compelling idea. And I don't know, it's something that I keep thinking about exploring, if not in the spin-off, and maybe a different spin-off. What happens when people find out they do exist, right? And what does that do to the world in which we live in? Hello, X-Men. And how does that change everything and nothing? And do they become hunted or do they become the hunted? You know, all of these things. You know, my best friend is a woman named Emily McKay, and she wrote a vampire book many years ago called The Farm. And she wrote it actually, because like she and I laugh all the time that I wrote Crave, because she wrote it in response to Twilight, and she's like, if vampires existed, they would not be hiding, they would be eating us, and that is how it is. And so she created these like farms where they like farm teenagers and ate them.
Oh.
And it was a bloody violent book. It was very good. And so like what does that look like? So yeah, I think it's a lot of balancing those questions and what would happen if we do find out, because eventually, you know, they're running around New York City, and you know, I have it like in the court where like it's like, you know, been spelled so that nobody knows that the dragons are flying above Times Square. But like, what if that slips one day? Whoops, what's gonna happen? I think that's a really compelling question. Yes.
Okay, this is really bad, but I love vampires.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I know you do. I'm just curious, like, I don't know, I know this is difficult, but like your favorite vampire book or movie?
Okay, I'm gonna go with my gut reaction to that question, which is The Lost Boys, because it's the first one I saw, and I think that is what sparked my fascination. All those years ago, I was very young, so I'm probably too young, and yeah, against my mother's wishes, she didn't know I was at a slumber party, and I think from the moment I saw that, I was like, yeah. Let's, you know, and then I read Bram Stoker's, you know, Dracula, and then I kind of fell down the rabbit hole. But let's go with The Lost Boys because it was the first.
Okay, was it that was the last question? Or
Last question.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm doing a signing afterwards. Even if you don't, you know, just come by and talk to me for a couple minutes if you want. And I have a bunch of swag here, some that hasn't been given out anywhere else, and some that you've seen around before. But yeah, come see me, and I have a candle tomorrow as well. Okay, thank you so much, guys. And did you, let me get my thing and I'll answer your question. Come on up.
Before that,
Oh, here we go.
where can they find you on the internet?
I'm mostly on Instagram. That's my favorite place. I'm Tracy Wolff Books on Instagram.
What booth are you at?
What booth am I at? Can you remind me, somebody, my nice, wonderful person?
Perfect, thank you.
I'm right down below here, right?
Yes, she'll be at the WSA signing area between halls B and C.
Thank you.
All right, I will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, you're so lovely.
I really wanted to go more in depth with like all of the other stuff, but I was just like, that's where,
Oh, it's hard.